Now that you know more about springs, their importance to Floridians, and how human activity can negatively impact them, let's have a look at some of the laws and policies that Florida and the federal government have developed in order to protect them. We know that some of these laws and regulations can be a little daunting, so this is just an overview to give you the foundational information that will help you to understand policymakers and to prepare you to participate in springs policymaking processes. As you'll recall from Module 1, much of Florida's water supply comes from the Floridan Aquifer, the porous carbonate rock formation that captures and stores water underground. Water from the aquifer occasionally bursts from the surface in the form of crystal clear springs. Because Florida has so much water, used in so many ways, there are a number of government actors and laws that are in charge of protecting Florida's water quality and quantity. The Florida Water Resources Act, at Chapter 373 of the Florida Statutes, sets forth Florida's water supply policy. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection, also called FDEP or just DEP, and the water management districts are then charged with implementing that policy through regulation and permitting programs. The state is divided into 5 water management districts: the Northwest District, the Suwannee River District, the Southwest Florida Water Management District, the St. Johns River Water Management District, and the South Florida Water Management District. If you are unsure which water management district has jurisdiction over waters in your area, consult the WMD homepage, provided on the Additional Resources slide at the end of this module. Regional water supply planning is the process by which the water management districts periodically assess the sufficiency of the water supply in their areas. The plans must consider whether the existing supply is adequate to meet existing and future reasonable beneficial uses, taking into account population growth, agricultural demand, and the natural environment, for a planning period of 20 years. These processes are open to the public for input. The plans must identify a list of water supply development project options from both traditional and alternative water supply options to meet the projected water demand for the period. Water management districts are also required to adopt minimum flow levels, or MFLs, for priority water bodies. MFLs are the minimum flow rates and water levels at which springs can sustain the health of the ecosystem. If flows become too low, there may not be enough water for organisms like manatees. Reduced flows can also exacerbate algae problems and impede recreation at the springs. In some cases, levels can be reduced so far as to eliminate some smaller springs altogether. Because of this, water withdrawal permits may only be issued if the withdrawal does not then result in a pressure or flow decrease below the MFL. To find a list of priority water bodies and their minimum flow levels in your area, see the MFLs link on the Additional Resource page. A consumptive use is any use of water which reduces the supply from which it is withdrawn or diverted. Consumptive use permits, often abbreviated CUPs or CUPs, are required for any withdrawal of groundwater or surface water. Consumptive use permits are issued by water management districts. The permit may only be issued if the withdrawal will not result in a spring flow dropping below the minimum flow level or otherwise harm the water body. In order to be permitted, a consumptive use must be found to be a reasonable, beneficial use of the resource and must be consistent with public interest. However, these environmental safeguards are being eroded. Water management districts are streamlining their processes to ease permitting obligations on industry by relaxing some compliance criteria, facilitating permit renewals, and extending the terms of the permits. The Clean Water Act was the first major step taken to improve water quality across the nation. The following video provides some background on the passage of this historic piece of legislation.
On October 18, 1972, Congress passed the Clean Water Act. Waterkeeper organizations across the world are honoring the 40th anniversary. This bold legislation, put forward by visionaries in Congress, returned control of our nation's waterways to the citizens of the United States as part of the public trust. Before we began to grapple with regulating water quality, some rivers were so polluted that their waters could burn. The Cuyahoga River in Ohio caught fire more than a dozen times from the 1860s to the 1960s. Something was wrong. Water was not providing life, it was killing it. Congress's 1972 goal was to have eliminated all discharges of pollutants into the nation's navigable waters by 1985. Almost 2 decades later, in 2002, the Environmental Protection Agency mournfully acknowledged that the water quality in many parts of the country was in steady decline. Pollution in our waters comes from many forms and from many sources. Discharge from industrial plants, sewage treatment facilities, as well as runoff from our streets and backyards can have a negative impact on our water quality. Pollution in our great nation is diverse. It includes disease-causing pathogens such as bacteria and viruses, as well as carcinogenic chemicals such as benzene, dioxin, PCBs, and trichloroethylene. Siltation is also a major pollutant in many southeastern streams and springs. The mission of nonprofit Tennessee Riverkeeper is to protect the Tennessee River and its tributaries by enforcing environmental laws like the Clean Water Act and others, and educating the public. The organization is a proud member of Waterkeeper Alliance, aligned with over 200 similar waterkeepers around the world. Tennessee Riverkeeper and the Waterkeepers will keep fighting for the basic right to swimmable, drinkable, and fishable waterways.
Water quality laws in Florida are based on the Federal Clean Water Act, administered by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in cooperation with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection. The Clean Water Act sets minimum water quality obligations that states must meet, but the states design their own programs for how to achieve those minimum standards. States can be more protective of waterways if they wish. The Clean Water Act is often said to be a floor, not a ceiling. Florida Statutes, Chapter 403, details the various state programs for meeting the federal standards. The Federal Clean Water Act prohibits all discharges into surface waters unless the polluter receives a permit specifying how much of each contaminant they are allowed to release and what kinds of pollution control technologies are required. This permit system is called the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES. To implement the Clean Water Act and NPDES permitting program, the federal government works with the states in a process called cooperative federalism, meaning that the federal government sets the law and the states decide how to enforce it. FDEP and EPA work together to set water quality standards, which are levels of pollution that are considered safe for a water body. Then the water management districts and DEP issue permits to dischargers based on meeting those water quality standards. Stormwater discharges are also similarly regulated. When a water body is polluted above the level set by the water quality standards, it is known as impaired. Impaired waters go on a list for the development of TMDLs and BMAPs. TMDL stands for Total Maximum Daily Loads. TMDLs are the total amount of pollutants that can be added to a system that will ensure protection of water quality. Thus, the TMDL is the total amount of allowable pollution, which must then be divided among all of the different sources, from industry to domestic sources to stormwater to agriculture, which discharge to that water body. DEP then creates a Basin Management Action Plan, or BMAP, identifying ways that each discharger can reduce its pollutant load. That may be through new pollution control technology for industries, advanced treatment for sewage facilities, increased stormwater management, or best management practices for agriculture. For a list of impaired waters and TMDLs, see the link provided on the Additional Resources page. An outstanding Florida water is a water that the state has designated as worthy of special protections based on its natural attributes. The designation is intended to be especially protective of good water quality. Most OFWs are managed by the state or federal government as parks, wildlife refuges, preserves, sanctuaries, state or national forests, scenic and wild rivers, or aquatic preserves. OFWs are listed under the Florida Administrative Code at 62-302.700. A link to the relevant portion of the Administrative Code is included in your list of additional resources. Now let's try an exercise in which you explore the regulations associated with a particular water body. Form small groups in your class. Each group should choose a different Florida water body. Using the resources on the Additional Resources slide, determine what water management district is responsible for managing that water body. Is your chosen water a priority water body for which the district has set minimum flow levels? Is your water body on the impaired list for failing to meet proper water quality standards for any pollutants? If so, what steps have the district taken to reduce pollution in the water body? For example, has the agency developed a BMAP? Lastly, review the list of outstanding Florida waters at 62-302.700 in the Florida Administrative Code and see if your water body is listed. Here's a list of several additional resources for you to consult for use in your activity and if you would like to learn more information about a particular subject. This presentation was produced by Save the Manatee Club with funding and support from the Protect Florida Springs Grant Program.